we should call maintenance.
I'll fix it. I'm gonna fix it.
Concentrate it, maintain it, maintain control.
Maintenance complete.
This is The Maintainers, a Bluecap Community Podcast. My name is David Lee, director with Tractian, and your host for The Maintainers Show.
And I'm Jake Hall, the manufacturing millennial. We're super excited to be welcoming you back for another conversation. And today we're joined by Gautam Sane, who is the senior reliability engineer for CP Kelco. CP Kelco has been around for 90 years. They're a manufacturer and provider for the food, beverage, and consumer industry. And it's really exciting because Gautam is joining us today with a lot of experience. He comes from the oil and gas industry. Now he's been in the food and bev industry as well. So Gautam, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate being on here. I'm looking forward to this exciting conversation with y'all about reliability. So let's do it.
This podcast is brought to you by Tractian. Tractian offers streamlined hardware and software solutions designed to make maintenance more reliable and profitable. Their AI-powered condition monitoring and asset management solution predicts machine failures and unplanned downtime, allowing clients to save an average of $10 million every trimester. It's artificial intelligence quarterbacking your maintenance.
So before we get into the business talk of things, summer's wrapping up. So what was your favorite thing to do out in the sun this year so far?
Well, for me, I mean, I feel like I'm in probably one of the best places in the country in San Diego that I can just enjoy the beaches week in and week out. Summertime's obviously perfect for that. So yeah, you could definitely find me out on the beaches these last few months, just taking in the warm temperatures and the nice waves and everything. It was great.
So located in California, however, we have to recognize the shirt, especially after so far how the season's been going so far. So how's college football treating you so far this year?
Oh, it's been a long time coming. It's finally treating me good again. It's been 12 years since we were ranked. So I'm finally excited to see us number 3 in the country. So let's keep that going towards a playoff run and hopefully a national championship.
So is Arch Manning going to be your guy for the next 3 years? Is he going to be carrying your team to victory for the next 3 years after he redshirts this year?
I hope so. Yeah. Let me see that Manning blood and burnt orange. I want to see the good things coming from that.
Awesome.
So Gautam, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started in the industry?
So I'm a chemical engineer by degree. I have a bachelor's from the University of Texas at Austin, as you can see from the shirt. I also have a licensed PE in chemical engineering, as well as certifications in project management, as well as maintenance and reliability. I'm originally from Texas, Houston to be exact. I would say that I chose to pursue chemical engineering, really based on my affinity towards math and science growing up. I guess, given that, I kind of knew medicine was out or biology was out when I knew I couldn't handle dissections and I got squeamish around them. So I was always inspired by chemistry though, because of its inherent concept of innovation. You could take 2 different substances and react them and make a new product. I always liked that inherent concept and I wanted to see where that could potentially take me, in the future. So I really wanted to pursue something in chemistry and maybe even engineering, because that actually runs in my family. Like on my dad's side, it's all engineers. So I wanted to kind of mesh the two and see where that would take me. So, but then, yeah, like you said, after that, I started out in oil and gas, actually in Houston after I graduated as a process design engineer for Fluor Daniel, which is an engineering, procurement, and construction company, big name. I don't know if you've heard of them. And they service major refineries and chemical operations around the world. In that role, I was doing design work. So I would run hydraulic and thermodynamic simulations, so that way we could size equipment, piping systems, instrumentation and controls hardware, all the basic components of any manufacturing operation. So I got a lot of good design experience from that, and then had a somewhat forced transition away from oil and gas due to global market factors. So found my way in food. And yeah, I've just been kind of rotating through production, maintenance, engineering at this company. So I feel like I bring a really unique blend of experience and knowledge to this role as a reliability engineer for the company.
So I guess my first question is, before we dive into the next segment, what's been some of the biggest differentials between the oil and gas and the food and bev, and also some of the big similarities between the two? Like, what have you found that's transferred well from one industry to another? And then what's been a complete awakening to you that way as well with that transition?
Sure. Good question. I would say one of the main similarities is the design of these systems, these manufacturing systems. Like, it doesn't matter if you're in oil and gas or food and beverage or wherever else, for a manufacturing plant, you're pretty much transporting, something from point A to point B. So you need to figure out what equipment do you need to do that? What type of transfer systems do you need in order to make that happen? So a lot of the design concepts that I learned in oil and gas easily apply to food and beverage industry, because it's the same centrifugal pumps, transfer systems, heat exchangers, distillation columns, same types of equipment. So actually, it was a rather seamless transition than I would have expected. But to your other point, the food and beverage industry, I did not realize how strict they are when it comes to contamination and microbial interference of products. Like when I was in oil and gas, like that was the last thing on our mind, was dealing with, oh, your product is contaminated with bacteria. What? It's just oil, put it in the car. But now you're worried about, contamination affecting people. So it's a much stronger emphasis on cleanliness and sanitation around these manufacturing operations. So that is something I definitely had to kind of adjust to. And at the end of the day, it was all great experience, because now I also know kind of the basic ins and outs on how to keep processes clean, along with running them efficiently as well.
Great explanation there. I love the similarities and also that contrast there, right? That was very interesting. Never thought about that before as well. So we know a little bit about you now. We're going to jump into our first segment. It's called the Maintainers Mashup. We're going to deep dive into the equipment, management, and teams, and how can we make maintenance more reliable across the industry.
Maintenance required.
Listen, I maintain.
I maintain it myself.
Maintain course.
Maintain speed.
I gotta maintain respect.
So can we hear a little bit more about CP Kelco, as you talked about the differences there, but more so your day-to-day?
So as I mentioned, I'm the reliability engineer at CP Kelco. It's essentially like any other manufacturing operation or plant that you would encounter, anywhere across the world. So the purpose of my role at this company is to ensure that the assets that we have are able to run to the desired level of performance as needed by the users, or in this case, our production team. The key being whenever it's called upon. So we always want to make sure that our assets are ready to run the way they need to whenever. So what I do is I drive that by implementing various programs across the site, such as mechanical integrity, predictive maintenance, continuous improvement to eliminate bad actors. So my job is to try to make sure I eliminate all those problems that could have impact our asset availability to our operation.
So can you dive a little bit more into, the different types of assets that you guys have, right? Food and bev, while it's a niche industry, there's so many different types of manufacturing processes and equipment and variabilities and systems and, recipes that are built into that all have to be monitored to create successful products. Can you dive more into the assets, and can you maybe talk about a couple of the products that you guys make and why that type of equipment is so critical to that area?
Yeah, let me kind of back up and explain kind of what our company manufactures, so I can get into more of the specifics. So CP Kelco is a nature-based solutions company that's one of the world's leading producers of specialty hydrocolloids. So hydrocolloids are essentially thickening and gelling agents that are used in all kinds of consumer goods, ranging from food industry, personal care, industrial, as well as medical applications also. So what we do is we produce these hydrocolloids through a specialty fermentation process. So essentially what we've figured out over the last 50 some odd years is, through extensive research and development, we've been able to identify key bacterial cultures that reside naturally, on various leaves and plants in nature. And we have found a way to harvest those specific bacterial cultures and artificially drive their production of our hydrocolloid product. CP Kelco as a whole has plants across the world, and they produce various families of these hydrocolloids. The plant in San Diego where I work makes a product fit line called Gel and Gum. If you were to buy a carton of almond milk and look at the back and look at the ingredient list, I guarantee you'll see gel and gum on the ingredient list. So there's a very good chance that that ingredient itself probably came from my facility. That gel and gum, it's derived from a fermentation process. So our assets are designed to support that fermentation process. So we have numerous fermentation vessels ranging from small sizes to large sizes. We have what else? We have large, agitators for those fermentation vessels with gearboxes and large motors driving those agitators. And then when it comes to the actual production side, that I would say, more or less mimics a standard oil and gas facility. You have your centrifugal pumps, you have your distillation columns, you have filters in line, drying systems, milling systems, things of that nature. Now, we do have some specialty equipment that is specific to our product, like vertical presses and rotary dewatering screens to separate solids from liquids. So yeah, it's just, we have some custom things, but a lot of also standard equipment on the site.
And the one thing that, I look at when you guys are out there, after I've been in the food and bev industry for a while now, and you guys are touching all different types of stuff. And really, when you talk about jelly and gum or xanthan gum or pectin or like citrus fibers, like all the different types of stuff that you're processing and manufacturing, they go into a wide variety of applications. But the unique thing about your manufacturing process is it's not like you do one segment and then like you stamp a part, and it doesn't matter if that stamp part sits there for 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days. When it's done with that, you can just grab it and go to the next manufacturing process. With your system, it's a little bit more unique, right? Because it's time critical. It's process critical. You can't just make something and then have it sit there for hours and days and then come back and touch it later. And I think that's the one thing that really makes it unique when we're looking at these type of manufacturing processes. The assets have to work right during the right time. And I think that's why it's so important to have a standard of reliability when it comes to those manufacturing processes that are out there. So, I'd love for you to dive more into deeper is, in order for you guys to manufacture a successful product, I would say the culture of reliability has to be established to make sure that equipment is running right, properly, on time, when it needs to be running. How do you go about creating that culture and striving to have that culture at CP Kelco?
To be honest, I would say that culture had been lacking at the company until recently. I think there was more of a focus that had been put on reliability from the higher ups. So now that kind of is permeating throughout the site. But I would say, at the onset of that movement, there really wasn't much data around it to support that culture change until we put together this OEE model, which I'll get into later. We were able to actually develop a data-driven model that actually scores the plant performance based on various factors that impact day-to-day production, like asset downtime or inefficient operation or bad quality. So what we were able to do now is we've been able to define essentially a grade for our plant based on how much product were we able to put out the door compared to what we should have been able to put out the door. And whatever bad actors we highlight as reasons that cause those gaps in us not being able to meet our attainment, we will Pareto that from highest impact to lowest impact, and then we'll know exactly what we need to target to bring the biggest value back to the company. So now we're in that mindset of always tackling the worst bad actors at all times. So we're essentially trying to bring the highest value back to the company, all the time, essentially.
So you created a real-time grading score that is established. So at the end of each shift, how you guys scored each day in terms of what your expectations were versus what your actual production was.
That's correct. Yes. And like I said, we took it a step further to also be able to identify what were the root causes and equipment associated with those discrepancies. So it's not just the score, it's also the score plus the root causes and reasons why we had that score.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love the fact that you have this opportunity with executive level, I would say, approval, right? Where it's from the top down, they're changing that cultural direction there. And it seems like it's been very impactful. But you also mentioned data. As they say, data is the new oil. Us both being former oil and gas people, it's very clear why that's important. So This seems like a good moment to actually talk about that, the modernization of maintenance and monitoring. And so recently joining CP Kelco, I've heard that you've already made a huge impact, right? So could you talk about that a little bit and describe exactly how you did that for the listeners today?
Yeah, let me start by saying the type of mindset I have when I try to approach, different challenges throughout the day. Really, I like to solve problems in a way that they get solved once and for all. I don't want to just put a Band-Aid on a problem just to come back to it, day later, a week later, just to deal with the same problem again. Like I want any problem I face to always be a new problem, because at that point, if I've faced a problem once and solved it, I shouldn't see it again. So that type of mentality is what I brought to this company. And whenever our operators or people would bring issues to my attention, I wouldn't just try to solve it there and then. I would try to figure out, okay, how else can I prevent this from happening in the future? To kind of go back to your point, David. So one of the first things I noticed when I started this company is, as with any manufacturing plant, quality is key, right? You want to make sure you're making good quality product all the time. Now, I noticed that there was room for improvement in terms of getting our quality better. And one gap that I guess I had noticed in the plant was the sense of awareness at the floor level as far as how their decision making is driving quality. So, in the past, we would just give our teams a set of instructions saying, "Hey, go run the process a certain way, and it'll make the product the way we need it to." But it actually goes beyond that, because it's not just make certain process changes. It's also, hey, you need to look at the quality that you're getting in line and make certain adjustments to make sure you're always driving the right quality to begin with. So that piece had been missing until, I guess when I got there, I noticed that, hey, our operators don't really know what the quality of their product is in real time. So if we build models that show them what type of quality they're basically they're producing right now, they should be able to then make those necessary changes. And then hopefully the final product, once everything is blended together, it ends up, falling in spec. So I was able to build them a control chart for one of the key process parameters that allowed them to see what the totalized average value was to that point in the production process. And it essentially give them, I guess, a forward outlook as far as, hey, you process half the batch at a certain spec, you might want to process the other half of the batch at a different spec, so that way you end up blending them into the right quality that you want. So implementing a program like that really did help drive up the quality, because now, like I said, our guys know exactly what type of quality they're producing in line. So that only helps with delivering the right final product at the end of the day.
So that kind of dives into my next question on how you ensure consistent uptime. So I want to expand more on that. So you're talking about, you're building these models, you're building that area, you're building that communication. How have you learned the best way is to communicate that information to your employees, right? When you talk about you make production during the first half a day and then you want to shift it, how have you learned to get people on board to say, hey, we're making real-time changes, because people don't like change, especially when it's in the middle of a production. How have you figured out how to communicate real-time change during the day to have people look at your models and say, you know what, we're going to run with it. We're going to do something different.
Yeah, actually, I would say that a lot of the background to develop that type of vision and mindset, I would say honestly comes from watching sports. Because if you watch professional head coaches talk to their players and try to get them to be on the same page with running a certain offense or running a certain defense, you have to understand what types of personalities you're going to be interacting with, and how to bring them all in alignment with your vision, and what types of methods you may need to employ to get people to buy in.
So what I'm hearing is you're the coach prime of your manufacturing process line is what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to be Coach Prime. Exactly. Understanding that, or seeing other people, coach others, allows me to also see what tactics work best when it comes to trying to communicate to other people. But like you said, Jake, communication is key. You have to communicate to your people if you want to implement a change. You can't just do it blindly. So yeah, that's a big element of it.
Now, when it comes to this OEE model, it sounds like you all transitioned over and focused on PDM, predictive maintenance, once you kind of got everything lined out. And recently, you actually partnered with Tractian. So doing this PDM project, what are your biggest hopes, your goals, and expectations, and how that's going to impact uptime, runtime, reliability in general of the machines, etc.?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, when we first built this OE model, we were able to identify which assets were impacting our production process the most in terms of uptime. With that, knowing that information, we partnered with Tractian because we were excited to see what they could bring in terms of improving our asset availability, because we've identified certain assets that we know that if they failed, they're going to create a catastrophic impact to the plant. And the OEE allowed the site to really realize that, predictive maintenance was necessary for the plant, and we needed to implement programs like vibration monitoring. So that was actually one of the main tasks that I was assigned to do when I joined the reliability, was to try to bring in a vibration monitoring program. So when we were conducting all the evaluations with vendors, what really stood out to me about Tractian was the analytics that they brought. I really was very impressed by the reliability metrics that they're able to calculate in real time, the level of detail when it comes to the failure modes and the insight generation. The other thing that also really stood out to me was that also kind of fit in with our needs as at the plant was your ability to support cellular service when it comes to data transmission. Because for our plant, we have a lot of security related obstacles, for lack of a better word. So we needed a system that would integrate well with IT. So it's, Tractian obviously supported that very well. And then, one thing that I feel like doesn't get talked about as much especially up front, is the user friendliness of the systems. And that was one thing I was really blown away by was the ease of use of Tractian's system compared to all the other solutions I saw. It is so easy to use your system. One of the highlights I wanted to bring up is the bearing library that you have in Tractian, where you can actually assign the specific bearings to the assets, and then the platform will automatically use that bearing data to then generate the insights associated with those exact bearings. So, there were just a lot of cool features that we saw with Tractian that we're really hoping to take advantage of, going forward to keep our uptime up. And it's already looking like we're already catching some insights. So one of the assets that's key to our plant, if it fails, it literally will cause about 2/3 of the production to shut down. That asset, it was flagged for a bearing issue by the Tractian system. So we have a predictive maintenance request now to change out that asset during our upcoming shutdown. But without Tractian being able to tell us that, we might have just gone through the shutdown with that same asset and the same bearing in place. So yeah, a lot of good potential I see with this partnership.
Awesome.
So we've heard about CP Kelco, how they operate, but I kind of want to learn more about what's in your toolkit specifically, right? We want to learn about the latest trends and technology that's happening in the manufacturing, but at the same time, we want people to learn and grow professionally.
We're gonna fix it. Get the tool.
Pick the one right tool.
The right tool for the right job.
So, this next question is, we learned about your toolkit and how you have seen personal and career growth. So can you talk a little bit more about, how you've really enjoyed the STEM field over the years, right? You've been in oil and gas, you're now in food and bev. But what would you do to say, encourage others who are interested in getting involved in this space and saying, hey, this is an industry, this is a career that would be exciting for them?
Kind of going back to my background, I guess I was inspired to go into STEM because of my parents. We have engineers all along my dad's side. My mom has a master's in chemistry. So I really drew from their life experiences growing up, as far as understanding which career paths would be most successful. I don't know if successful is the right word, but less volatile. Maybe that's the best word. Maybe that's a good word. I guess, yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is I know that careers in STEM are always in high demand, right? So I kind of knew that, okay, if I pursue STEM, I know there's always going to be a need for my skill set, whatever point of time. It's not as cyclical as other professions can tend to be. And so that's one of the major things I like about STEM, obviously along with the science and math, right, which is part of what I already like to do. But I also like that I'm able to apply that in roles where I know that there's always going to be a need for it.
Yeah. And I got to reflect a little bit on your background being an oil and gas guy. And obviously the volatility of pricing there is one of the most extremes in different verticals, right? So I'm sure you learned that it's good to have a ability to pivot into something else. And that is what STEM does the absolute best, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's a really good takeaway there.
Awesome. Well, with that, let's jump into our third segment, which is, the future of factories.
Meet the future.
To our futures.
What future? The factory. My factory. Everybody's factory.
I love your factory. My factory, my rules.
We had some great conversations earlier talking about technology and when it comes to incorporating better data. So what advice would you give when you would say companies who want to explore, creating better OEE models or creating real-time action plans to shift production during the day or during the shift? What advice would you give them on wanting to expand, that collecting data and making actionable decisions on it immediately?
I would say the very first thing that's key to that is you have to really understand your process in and out. Like you really need to know how the time that you have available to you is being utilized to run your manufacturing operation. As we all know, time is money, right? So every hour, minute that's wasted, it equates to some amount of money that's lost. So what I recommend that should be done is develop a model that's specific to one of your critical assets on the site and identify all the different stages of that asset's operation over the course of the process. Because that asset should be doing something at every point in time, meaning it should never just be sitting idle. In the case of our fermentation process, either we're actively using a fermenter vessel to grow a batch, or we're actively in the process of cleaning that vessel and getting it ready for the next batch. And then as soon as it's ready, it's growing the next batch. Meaning there's no point in that cycle where the fermenter is just sitting there idle doing nothing. So what I would recommend is, similar to that, pick an asset where you know what the defined cycle is for that asset and what target durations you should expect to have for each stage of that asset. And then start tracking, am I spending the amount of time that I say I should be doing that particular step of the operation? If I'm taking more time than I should be, you should be tracking that in real time. Hey, why did I take an extra hour or 2 hours to do this cleaning step when it should only take me 1 hour? In real time, that's where you really need the buy-in from your production team and the people on the floor to be providing that feedback to the engineers and to the supervisors as far as, hey, we counted this delay because of so-and-so. Then it goes back to how you set up your data collection tools. So, the way we set up ours is, we have drop-down selections for high-level root causes. We have a drop-down selection for all the different assets in the plant. So our production team can directly assign whatever issue happened to a particular asset if it was caused by an asset, and then what type of delay occurred. Was it out of service for maintenance? If maintenance is doing a PM on that asset, well, obviously you're gonna encounter a delay in the production process until maintenance gives that asset back to you to use. So essentially, you're capturing all those different reasons for the various time delays that you encounter. And then, that just helps really build a data set over time that you can then review collectively and, develop summary charts for and really identify the top bad actors and know what to tackle first to resolve those issues.
And that's a very interesting point. So we've talked about the data, but also you alluded to the buy-in, right? That's very, very important to get that buy-in when it comes to the actual team members that are doing this, right? So yep. As someone who we already know you've successfully done several projects, how do you get that buy-in, and do you see obstacles for the future as we onboard more technology, as we get newer employees? Do you see obstacles for us as a community in the industrial space implementing these? And what do you say is the right way to kind of navigate those treacherous waters, I'll say?
Sure. Honestly, I would say this. I would actually say they're not really treacherous at all. It really just comes down to simplifying your point in a way that makes sense to your audience. So a good way to, explain this in other words is OEE. It can be a very complicated model, but at the end of the day, everyone understands time and money, right? If I'm wasting an hour doing something, everybody understands that. It doesn't matter how complicated or simple your model is to tell you that. So that's kind of the approach I used to help get the buy-in. I told my team, we have this complicated OEE model, but at the end of the day, it's tracking how much money we're losing in real time in our production process. And so that's the overall value that we're gaining out of this, is that we're actually able to see where we're having our monetary losses. And now we can actually request capital to fund engineering projects to eliminate those problems. So you have to come full circle and show them what's the end goal you're trying to get to, and make it clear in a way that they understand. Because if they also see that end goal and agree with you, they're more likely to buy into the process that you're trying to implement.
Right. No, that's good. That's very good words. Sounds like you've been very successful at that as well, which I've personally been able to see. So congratulations on that. Now, with that being said, talking about the future of factories and things, I like to look a little bit further down range and kind of imagine the future, maybe when we're multi-planetary species, like Elon Musk says that he's aiming, right? But anytime before that, where do you see us as humans, or even from a practical level here in the near future? Where do you see the future of factories from a program perspective, project and technology perspective?
Okay, good, because I was going to intentionally avoid the human factors perspective on that question.
For sure.
But from a technical perspective, I would say the biggest challenge going forward would be to try and drive more environmentally friendly manufacturing throughout the world. When I grew up in Houston for 20 something years, I never experienced a 100-degree day during the summertime. And my parents just went through like 2 straight months of 100-degree weather in Houston and I was completely shocked because I had never had to see that.
Wow.
So my point is that it's coming whether factories like it or not. There's going to be a focus on being more environmentally sustainable. So I think getting ahead of it obviously is key. And also from a reputation standpoint, if your customer base sees you or considers you at the vanguard of the environmental movement towards being sustainable, that's only going to help the bottom line. So at the end of the day, sure, there might be some short-term pain when it comes to investing in environmentally friendly solutions, but long-term, it's going to pay off big. And to anybody that wants to challenge me on this, we already accept this whenever we go work out, because working out causes muscle pain, but you still do it every day to build muscle over time. So there's going to be upfront, investment, but it's going to pay off long term. And I think that's where we're going globally. So,
right. That's really good. And from my perspective, the good news is I see a lot of enterprise companies focusing on this. And so it is definitely a movement that's taking place. And so we'll see where that goes. Now, before we wrap things up and say goodbye to Gautam, we would like to go into our next segment, which we call the Fix It Funnies.
The fix is in.
It's making a really funny noise.
I'm gonna fix it.
Make it funny would be great if you could make it funny.
Your fate is fixed.
That's what makes it funny. Make sure it's funny.
So we asked about your summer memories and things like that, but let's say we wanted to have this conversation here shortly in the winter. Where would we have that conversation? Where would you like to be if we could do this anywhere in the world during the winter time? What would that look like for you?
Yeah, that's actually kind of funny because if it was anywhere in the world, we wouldn't be doing it in the winter. We'd be going to the southern hemisphere and doing it in their summertime. Because I'm not a winter guy at all. Yeah, the worst I did was maybe 40-degree weather. So you're not going to find me outside in snow. So yeah. But I mean, honestly, if I was like,
that's a very good answer.
Yeah.
So if you were in the food and bev industry, what other industry or what other profession would you like to be in?
That's actually that's a good question. It's kind of tough to say, but I've always had a passion towards like getting into something with my profession, the professional sports teams that I follow. Like I love doing data analysis. Like I give me behind the scenes at the Houston Rockets front office and let me do data analysis and figure out how to get my teams to play better. Like I don't know. I guess you'd probably find me doing something in a sports related capacity. If it wasn't engineering,
you would be Moneyball, where they're going out there, and there's the guy that's doing all the analytics and the analysis and saying, no, we're playing for runs and on base percentage, not by individuals. You'd be that guy for a sports team.
I'd be that guy. Yep.
That's awesome. Houston Rockets, are you listening? You have an opportunity here.
Yeah. Right.
Awesome. So after Jake actually mentioning that show, my next question for you actually is, are you enjoying any sort of specific content, whether that be on Netflix, YouTube, podcast, hint? What are you looking at nowadays, if at all? What does that look like for you?
I really do enjoy watching sports, and right now we're in college football season, so I mean I'll tend to watch sports whenever it's on. But apart from that, I'll watch whatever the top Netflix documentaries are. Like it's hard to say, but Like I watched a show on Netflix or the Amazon Prime. It had to do with the new after high school basketball league that they just started in Atlanta called OTE, because like one of the Houston Rockets just drafted a guy from the OTE league because he circumvented going to college and went to play
That's right.
in this new league. So yeah, I was watching that. I watched Hard Knocks, the training camps special on the New York Jets. Like I just like getting, like, I guess maybe you could see kind of where my mindset for communication and getting and coaching people comes from is like I try to learn from the best. So I'm just always around that kind of environment, so I just enjoy that, I guess.
For sure. Thanks for coming to our show, Gautam. It has been wonderful to have you. Absolutely wonderful. And for everyone else, this has been The Maintainers, a Bluecap Community Podcast. Be sure to follow us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast content, as we are on most major platforms. So you'll be notified when we go live. Thanks again, and have a great day.
This podcast is brought to you by Tractian. Tractian offers streamlined hardware and software solutions designed to make maintenance more reliable and profitable. Their AI-powered condition monitoring and asset management solution predicts machine failures and unplanned downtime, allowing clients to save an average of $10 million every trimester. It's artificial intelligence quarterbacking your maintenance.